My name is Walter Hayes, and if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that love can be the greatest gift and the most painful weapon at the same time. I always believed that raising a child meant shaping a good human being, teaching them right from wrong, showing them compassion, honesty, respect for others. I believed that if I poured every bit of my heart into my son, if I gave him the stability I never had, if I protected him from the storms of the world, then he would grow into a man with a steady heart and a clear conscience. I thought love was enough. I truly did. I raised my boy along just me, a small house off a quiet Ohio back road, a beat-up Ford in the driveway, and a heart full of good intentions. I held him when he cried as a toddler. I kissed the bruises on his knees when he fell. I stayed up nights when he was sick. I worked long hours just to keep food on the table and lights glowing under our roof. And when he got older, when he started talking to people, teachers and neighbors and strangers would tell me how polite he was, how charming, how intelligent. They'd say, "Walter, you did good. You must be real proud." And I'd stand there smiling like a man holding the sun in his hands. Yeah, I was proud. I wanted so badly to believe I had done something right in a life that had been full of mistakes and losses. And for a long time, I held on to that story, my son, the one good thing I raised out of the broken pieces of my own upbringing. But time has a way of peeling truth back slow, like old paint on a wooden porch, and what's underneath, sometimes it ain't what you want to see. You see, the world saw an angel when they looked at my son. They saw a clean-cut young man with a gentle smile, the kind who remembered birthdays, helped neighbors with groceries, showed up to church on holidays wearing ironed clothes and polite words. They thought he was the shining example of how a boy should grow. But behind closed doors, behind the smiles he showcased for others, there were shadows. Small at first. Things most people would shrug off. A look in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. A tone in his voice that didn't match his words. A moment of silence where there should have been truth. I ignored it. God help me, I ignored it. Because a father's love is blind. It wears a filter over the world, softening every sharp edge, erasing every warning sign, comforting you with the lie that love alone can fix what is wrong. And I clung to that lie. I clung to it so hard I didn't see the truth creeping into my life like smoke under a door. There came a time when I couldn't ignore it anymore, when the charming young man everyone adored became someone I didn't recognize, someone calculated, someone cold, someone who carried secrets the way other people carried car keys, easy, casual, always within reach. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that every parent goes through a phase where their child outgrows them. But this was different. There was something in my son I couldn't name, something that made the air in the house feel heavy, something that made my gut twist even when his face was smiling. And when the truth finally came out, when the curtain finally tore open, it didn't just break my trust, it shattered the foundation of the life I spent decades building. Everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed, every piece of myself I had given to him, it all crumbled in one slow, horrifying realization. The boy I raised, the one I loved more than life itself, had grown into a man who saw my love not as guidance, not as safety, but as something to use, to manipulate, to take advantage of, to exploit. People always talk about betrayal like it's loud, like it hits fast, like a punch or a scream. But betrayal is quiet. It's slow. It's that moment when you look at someone and realize the person you thought you knew never truly existed. And that is a pain I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I'm telling this story myself not because I want pity, not because I'm looking for forgiveness, and not because I hate my son. No, I'm telling this because pain carries lessons carved into the bone. Lessons I wish someone had handed me before all of this. Lessons about love, about trust, about blindness, about how sometimes the people we give the most to are the ones who take the most from us. I tell this story because maybe, just maybe, someone out there will hear it before it's too late, because I didn't know the truth until the truth had already destroyed me, and this is how my son's secret ruined everything. There are days when standing up feels like lifting a mountain, days when sleep doesn't bring rest but memory. Life does that to a man. It doesn't just age your skin or your joints. It ages your heart. It takes the soft parts of you and hardens them. It turns laughter into something rare and silence into something heavy. And behind all of that are the things you once loved fiercely. The things you gave everything to only to watch them fall apart right in your hands. I was born and raised in a small Ohio town that nobody outside of the county could point to on a map. One of those places with only one traffic light, where every house had a porch swing and every kid grew up knowing exactly which floorboard creaked in the hallway of their home. We weren't anything special. We didn't have wealth or luxuries or nice vacations, but we had rules. Unspoken ones. Show up, work hard, don't complain, and no matter how hard life hits, you stand back up again. My father taught me that he wasn't a talker, the kind of man who believed a nod meant more than a paragraph. He worked at a factory, day in and day out, until his hands were so worn you wouldn't have recognized that they once belonged to a young man with dreams. My mother, she worked nights at a diner, serving coffee and pie slices to men too tired to smile and too stubborn to quit. We didn't say, "I love you" much in that house, but love was in the things left unsaid. It was in clean laundry. It was in food on the table. It was in the porch light left on late when someone was working overtime. I grew up thinking love meant showing up. Just be there. Do your best. Try. That was enough. So when I had my son Evan, I swore I would do better. I would take every quiet thing my parents felt and make it loud. I would say the words. I would show the affection. I would not just provide, would be there. His mother, her name was Caroline, was sweet once. Bright smile, hair that fell down her shoulders like sunlight, laughter that filled a room. But sweetness can be thin, like frosting over something hollow. I didn't see that when I was young, but youth is good at making us blind. She liked adventures, excitement, the thrill of being seen. And motherhood. Motherhood asks you to sit in the quiet, to stay, to show up. She wasn't built for staying. When Evan turned 3, she left. Bags packed before sunrise. No shouting, no fight. Just a quiet kitchen, a note on the table, and a silence so heavy I could feel it in my teeth. She said she needed more. More life, more adventure, more of herself. And none of that, apparently, included me or our son. I remember holding Evan when I realized she wasn't coming back. He smelled like baby shampoo and sleep. He wrapped his tiny arms around my neck and asked where Mummy went. I didn't know how to answer, so I just held him. Held him for a long, long time. That was the day I realized love isn't just saying the words. Love is staying when someone else leaves, so I raised him alone. I was no perfect father, not even close. Some days I came home from the auto shop so tired I could barely stand. My hands were always rough, skin cracked from oil and engine. I wasn't gentle, not the way some fathers seem to be, but I tried. God knows I tried. I made peanut butter sandwiches when I couldn't cook. I read him stories even when my voice was sandpaper. I sat with him during cartoons, even when I wanted nothing more than to sleep. I bought cheap birthday cakes and wrapped presents in newspaper because I couldn't afford the fancy kind, and he would lean into me small head against my ribs, and it felt like the world had narrowed down to something simple and good. I remember thinking, if I do nothing else in this life, let me love this boy right. And for a long time, I truly believed I was Dot. Evan grew up polite, quiet, the kind of kid teachers praised, neighbors adored, and strangers admired. He'd help carry groceries, hold open doors, say thank you without being told. People used to joke that I should write a parenting book. I'd laugh at that, embarrassed, proud in a way that burned warm and bright in my chest. It felt like I had taken all the brokenness of my life and somehow used it to build something good. But life is never that simple. Sometimes goodness can be imitation. Sometimes kindness is just another mask. There were signs, little things, moments I brushed aside, like how he seemed to like being seen helping more than helping itself. How his voice changed when people were watching. How his eyes, those calm, sweet eyes, held something sharp beneath the surface. Not kindness, calculation, but I didn't see it then. Because when you love someone, your love becomes a filter. It hides the cracks. It paints over the truth. I saw only my son, the boy I raised, the child I held, the life I built my entire heart around. When he was 17, I came home one night and found the money missing from my wallet. $50, not a fortune, but enough to notice. I asked him about it, not accusing, just asking. He looked at me with those soft, practiced eyes and said, "Dad, I saw it open. I didn't want the money falling out, so I put it in the drawer." He said it so easily, so smoothly, like breathing, and I believed him because I wanted to. But after that, there were more moments, more money gone, more explanations that sounded too good, too fast, too clean. Phone calls taken in whispers, doors locked, smiles that didn't reach his eyes. Every now and then, I'd feel something wrong flutter in my chest, like a bird trapped behind ribs. But I silenced it. I told myself he was growing, changing, becoming his own person. You don't want to smother your kid. You don't want to be the father who doesn't trust. So I let him have his privacy. I let him have his secrets. I told myself that was love. Years passed. He graduated high school with honors, went to college for business, became everything small towns admire: successful, independent, impressive. I bragged about him more than I spoke about myself. His achievements felt like my own, like proof that I had done right by him. After graduation, he got a job in a big firm. He spoke in words I didn't always understand: markets, mergers, negotiations. He had confidence, charisma, the kind that draws people in and makes them believe anything he says. He moved back home for a while to save money. I didn't mind. Truth is, I was grateful. I'd gotten used to the quiet, But quiet can feel like loneliness when you've known what it is to hold someone you love close every day. We'd eat dinner together. He'd talk. I'd listen. He spoke like a man building an empire. I watched him and thought, that's my boy, my son, the best thing I ever did. But I didn't know the truth. I didn't know that while he sat across from me, smiling, telling me about his promotions and his plans, he was already hiding something dark, something that would take everything I believed about love, fatherhood, effort, loyalty, everything, and crush it in the palm of its hand. The truth was already there, growing quietly, like rot under floorboards. You don't see it. Not at first, not until the wood breaks beneath your feet. But at that time, I was still just a father who loved his son, blindly, completely, dangerously. I thought loving him would save us, but instead, it was the very thing that destroyed me. When Evan came back home after graduating college, I remember thinking that life had finally given me one of those rare, gentle, full-circle moments. The kind you read about in books, but don't really expect to happen to ordinary men like me. I had raised a boy on my own, through scraped knees and school mornings and teenage silences. And now here he was again, not as a child, but as a grown man, sitting across from me at the same old kitchen table, where he once spilled cereal and colored dinosaurs with crayons, same brown eyes, same calm quietness in his face. But something in him was different. Like a picture you've seen your whole life, but suddenly notice isn't hung quite straight anymore. Something subtle, but undeniable if you looked long enough. He came back polished, bright, sharp, refined in ways I never was. He stood straighter. He spoke with confidence, certainty. Life fit him, or at least he acted like it did. He had become a man who believed the world owed him a place in it. Maybe that was ambition. Maybe it was something darker. I didn't know then. Or maybe I did and just didn't want to see it. Every morning he walked out the door in crisp shirts and ties, fabrics I didn't know the names of, colors coordinated with care. He carried one of those expensive leather bags that looked like it belonged to a lawyer or a CEO, not a 24-year-old who had barely begun his career. I used to watch him from the porch before I left for the shop. He walked like a man already sure of his future, like he could see a straight line to success, and nothing in this world could break it. He'd say things like, investor brunch, regional development call, expansion strategy briefing, words that were longer and shinier than anything I ever spoke in my life. Words that made my hands, always stained with engine grease no matter how hard I scrubbed, feel clumsy, outdated, unnecessary. But I didn't mind. A father doesn't need to compete with his son. A father just needs to be proud. And I was. God knows I was. For a while, everything seemed good, but small things steeny, threads began to loosen. And when threads loosen, they don't stop on their own. They pull, they unravel. Slowly at first, and then all at once. It started with his phone, always in his hand. Not scrolling, not laughing at videos, not chatting with friends. No, this was different. It was business, but business that felt too quiet, too private. He spoke fast, low, clipped. Like every conversation was urgent, like everything was on fire and only he could put the flames out. I remember one night, maybe 2 months after he moved back. It was late, almost midnight. I had gotten up to get a glass of water, and as I walked past his room, I heard him talking. The door was cracked open just enough for me to see him pacing the floor with his phone against his ear. His face wasn't calm the way the world saw him. It was tight, focused, hard. Double quotes. "No, we don't tell him," he said. His voice didn't sound like my son at all. "He doesn't need to know. He'd only get in the way." I stopped breathing. Just stood there in the hallway with the refrigerator humming behind me and the lamp in the living room casting a pale orange glow across the floor. He'd get in the way. Who was he? And why was he not supposed to know? My mind tried to say, maybe he meant someone else. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I imagined it. Love does that. Love lies for the person you love. Your brain starts building excuses faster than you can question them. I didn't ask him about it. I wish I had. I wish I had been braver. But courage is a strange thing. A man can fight through pain, hardship, hunger, heartbreak, yet the fear of losing someone you love can make your soul go quiet. I didn't want to risk pushing him away. Not after all the years it took just to get here, again just to sit across from him at a dinner table like we used to. So I said nothing. Around that time, Evan began bringing home gifts, small at first. A pair of boots I had once admired in a store window but walked away from because they cost too much. A watch, a leather jacket. Once he came home with a rare bourbon I had mentioned months earlier, just in passing. While watching a documentary about old distilleries, "Just thought of you. Dad," he'd say, smiling like it was the most natural thing in the world, but I knew better. I worked 30 years in a shop and never once bought anything like that. And my son, only months into a job, was giving away luxury like it was candy. Still, I let myself believe, because the alternative was doubt. One evening, he came home driving a truck. Brand new, black, shinier than anything that had ever sat in our old driveway. I remember laughing because I thought it had to be rented for a weekend or borrowed from a friend. No one in our family had ever owned anything that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread, but he tossed me the keys and said, "We're moving forward, Dad. No more small living. Small living, like my entire life, the house I worked for, the meals I cooked, the nights I went without sleep. The sacrifices I made, the love I gave was small." The words hit something inside me I didn't know could be bruised. But I didn't say anything. I didn't ask where the money came from. Didn't ask how he could afford payments like that. Didn't ask why the registration had someone else's name on it, which I would only discover much later. I just said, softly, "I'm proud of you, son," and he smiled. Beautiful, practiced smile. Time went by. And then one day, everything shifted. I closed up the shop early because my back was hurting so bad I could barely lift my arms. I drove home, thinking I'd just take a long shower and lay down for a while. But when I pulled into our driveway, Evan was outside. And he wasn't alone. There was a man with him, tall, clean-shaven, suit tailored to his body, like it had been made for him and only him. Shoes polished, so sharp they caught the sunlight. He looked at the house, not at Evan, with a kind of bored disgust, like he was standing somewhere beneath him. Evan noticed me, and something flickered across his face. Not guilt, not fear or annoyance, as though I had intruded on their moment. The man's smile disappeared instantly when he saw me. No introduction, no handshake, no politeness, just a short nod and a look that felt like evaluation, calculation. Then he got into a sleek black car and drove away without saying a single word. I turned to my son. He turned to me, and I didn't recognize him in that moment. "Who was that?" I asked. He shrugged, just shrugged. "Business," he said, and walked past me into the house. Not an answer, not even pretending to give one. The silence that followed him inside felt colder than winter. For the first time in my own home, I felt like I didn't know my son at all, but I still said nothing, because a father still wants to believe, even when belief is the thing killing him slowly. The truth didn't arrive like thunder. It didn't explode or shout or shake the walls. No, it came quietly, soft, almost careful, like it wanted to give me a chance to prepare myself. But I wasn't prepared. No father ever is. It was a Thursday evening, one of those grey, heavy rain nights where the water falls hard enough to blur the world. The kind of rain that makes the streets look lonely. I had stayed late at the shop, finishing up a transmission job on an old pickup truck. My back was aching and my hands were sore. Just like any other day, I was locking up when I saw the police cruiser pull into the lot. Not fast, not loud, no lights, no siren, just slow, deliberate. That's how you know something is wrong. The door opened and an officer stepped out. I didn't recognize him, but I recognized the look on his face. It was the look people get when they have to say something they wish they didn't have to say. "Mr. Hayes?" he asked, voice low, steady. My throat felt tight. "Yes." He glanced toward the shop office door. "Could we talk inside?" That was when the bottom dropped out of my stomach. People don't ask to go inside unless the news is heavy. We went into the small office, the same place I kept old invoices, spare keys, and photos Evan drew when he was a kid. The rain tapped softly against the window like it was nervous too. The officer sat down across from me, removed his hat, folded his hands. "Sir," he began slowly, "I want to speak to you before anything becomes public." My heart started pounding. My chest felt tight. "Your son is currently under investigation." For a moment, everything around me muted. The ticking wall clock faded. The rain faded. Even the sound of my own breathing disappeared. It was like the world paused just to watch me break. I swallowed hard. For what?" I asked, though I already felt like I didn't want to know. The officer took a breath. "Financial crimes," he said quietly. "Fraud, identity theft. A series of scam operations involving stolen personal data, manipulated accounts, and unauthorized financial transfers. We believe he may have been part of a group running a coordinated scheme." I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like my mind refused to understand the words, "my son." My Evan, the same boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and tears streaming down his cheeks. The same kid who held my hand in grocery stores. The same young man I cooked breakfast for every morning. No, that wasn't possible. There must be a mistake. I heard myself say, but the voice didn't sound like mine. The officer didn't argue. He didn't try to convince me. He just looked. "Sorry, he hasn't been charged yet," he said. "But the evidence is building. We just wanted to inform you before any warrants or public records move forward." I nodded, not because I agreed, but because my body no longer knew how to do anything else. He stood, placed his hat back under his arm. "If you notice anything unusual, anything at all, please contact us." He gave me a moment. He didn't rush me, and then he left. I sat alone in that office for a long time. I don't know how long. Time didn't feel real. My hands were cold. My chest hurt. The rain outside looked different now, harsher, louder, angry. Eventually, I drove home. I walked through the front door, dripping wet mud on my boots, my mind spinning in too many directions to form one clear thought. Evan was in the kitchen. He was stirring a pot of pasta, humming quietly to himself, like it was just another ordinary night. When he saw me, he smiled wide, easy, warm. But this time, I saw the smile differently. Wasn't warmth. It wasn't love. It wasn't my son. It was a mask, a performance, like he had practiced, smiling in the mirror until he could fool anyone, even me. I stood in the doorway, water dripping down my jacket onto the floor. He didn't notice at first. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. He turned off the stove, plated the food, casual, effortless. That you, Dad. Dinner's almost ready. I forced air into my lungs. Is it true? The words left my mouth before my brain could soften them. They came out raw, trembling. He looked at me, not startled, not confused, not afraid, just annoyed, like I had interrupted something he was doing. He set the spoon down slowly. "What have you heard?" he asked, tone flat. The casualness made my stomach twist. I felt something sharp in my chest, something like grief and rage braided together. "The police came to see me," I said. "They told me you're under investigation." He didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just breathed out a soft sigh, the kind someone makes when a child asks a stupid question. "Dad," he said, pulling out a chair and sitting down like this was just a conversation, not a collapse, not a betrayal, not a shattering of everything I ever believed. There are things you just don't understand. His voice was calm, too calm, like he had rehearsed this. I stared at him, really stared, and for the first time in my life, I saw a stranger wearing my son's face. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Just tell me." He leaned back in the chair, crossed his arms over his chest, and looked at me like I was small, like I was beneath him. "Why?" he asked. "Would you even be able to handle it?" I felt something in me break, a clean break, the kind that doesn't heal the same, Evan. My voice cracked. "What did you do?" He smiled, not the soft, shy smile he had when he was little. This one was sharp, confident, proud. "I didn't do anything wrong," he said. "I just stopped playing the world's game like a loser. The system is meant to be used. People with money stay on top because they take what they want. I simply learned to do the same. I adapted. My heart dropped into a place I don't know how to describe. A deep, dark place where love and disappointment mix into something unbearable. This wasn't adapting," I whispered. "This was stealing." He rolled his eyes. At me, at his father, at the man who raised him. "It's not stealing if they can afford to lose it," he said. I felt sick, physically sick. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. This wasn't temporary confusion or stress or desperation. This was who he was, something inside him, maybe something he was born with. Maybe something the world twisted into shape was wrong, rotten, hollow, and I had never seen it. Or maybe I had seen pieces of it all along. Small moments, quick flashes, little warnings, and maybe I just refused to believe my son could ever be anything other than good and love. Love made me blind. The weeks that followed were heavy, thick with tension and quiet dread. The police didn't arrest Evan immediately. Investigations take time. Evidence has to be confirmed, documents reviewed, statements recorded, leads traced, accounts followed. But the world doesn't wait for official news. People talk before facts are solid. Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. I began to notice them, the looks, not the curious kind. No, these were sharp, heavy, accusing, the kind of looks that change. How you walk, how you breathe, how you exist in the grocery store. A woman I had known for 10 years suddenly found the floor incredibly interesting. At the post office, a man I once helped fix a flat tire acted like I wasn't standing right behind him when I said hello. Even the old pastor, a man who once praised Evan's kind heart, hesitated before placing his hand on my shoulder, like my skin had become something contagious. I didn't defend Evan, not once. Not in words, not because I didn't love him, God. I loved that boy more than my own life, but because I did not know who he was anymore. Who are you supposed to defend when the person standing in front of you is wearing your child's face, but not your child's soul? I kept waiting for Evan to show something, guilt, fear, regret, anything that resembled humanity, but he didn't. Single quote, to calm, and one morning, I finally discovered why. It was a Tuesday, the kind of quiet morning where the sky is still pale and the world hasn't woken up yet. I was sitting at the shop office, sorting invoices the way I always did, trying to pretend life was still what it used to be, when I noticed a bank notice addressed to me, a notice about irregular transactions under my name, my business, my identity. I thought it was a mistake, some error, some system glitch, but as I opened more letters, more statements, more printouts, the truth unfolded like a knife, slowly pulling out of a sheath. He didn't just commit crimes, he had used me to do it. My accounts, my signature, my business license, my life. Every brick I laid, every hour I worked late, every bit of dignity I had earned in this world, he had used as a shield to hide behind. My legacy, the shop I built with sore muscles and nights where sleep felt like a luxury, was now tangled in fraud. Investigations. I wasn't just the father of a criminal. I was suddenly a suspect in my son's crimes. I remember walking to my truck, sitting in the driver's seat and braking. Not loudly, no screaming, no fist pounding, just tears, quiet, heavy, quiet tears that darkened my shirt like slow rain. The kind of tears that don't fall from your eyes, they fall from your bones. I drove home, or maybe the truck drove itself. I don't remember. Evan was in the living room, scrolling his phone like the world was perfectly fine. I stood there in the doorway, my hands trembling, my breath uneven, and I asked, why? He didn't look afraid. He didn't look sorry. He looked annoyed. He sighed, not with guilt, but with impatience. Dad, it's just paperwork. You'll be fine. I needed a clean front. I needed someone stable. You weren't using your name for anything big anyway. You weren't using your name as if my life was something disposable, as if the decades I spent building myself, surviving setbacks, fighting for stability, were nothing more than convenient, unused storage space he could take. He said it, The way someone talks about borrowing a screwdriver, like my identity, my existence, meant nothing. Something inside me didn't just break that day. It collapsed. Not my heart that had already been cracking for weeks. No. This was something deeper. This was trust dying. This was the final thread. The last connection between us, snapping so cleanly that the silence afterward felt like a grave. And in that silence, something else started to form. Not hatred, not rage, but clarity, cold, sharp, focused. I knew then, with a stillness I had never felt before, that I couldn't save him, not with love, not with guidance, not with forgiveness. Some people don't break, they rot. He didn't need protection. He needed to be seen, not as the golden boy, not as the polite charmer, not as the perfect son the world believed him to be, but as the man behind the mask, the one who knew how to smile while he ruined lives. And, for the first time in my life, I stopped being his father, and I began to become something else, the witness, the reckoning, the one who would let the world see the truth, because love had failed, hope had failed, patience had failed. Now, there was only truth, and truth was going to tear his mask apart. After that day, after the truth broke, whatever pieces of fatherhood were still holding me together, I did not raise my voice. I did not slam a door. I did not plead or demand or try to convince him of what he had done. Instead, I did something far more dangerous. I became quiet, truly quiet, not the silence of defeat. No, this was the silence of strategy. I pretended to accept his explanation. I pretended to understand. I pretended that I believed the world really was unfair, and that he had simply done what was necessary. Wore the expression of a weary father trying to avoid conflict. I nodded when he spoke. I laughed at his stories. I set dinner on the table every evening like nothing was wrong. And slowly, he relaxed. Evan always slipped when he felt untouchable, so I made him comfortable, made him certain, made him trust that I was as weak and blind as he believed. There were mornings where I would stand at the stove, stirring eggs, and he would sit across from me, scrolling his phone, completely unaware that every breath I took was part of a plan now, that every soft answer, every casual conversation was a step in a path I was building beneath him. The world teaches us that betrayal is loud, shouting, breaking, storming out, but the deepest betrayals happen quietly, with steady hands, with careful intention. One evening, after dinner, while he slept in his room, peaceful, undeserving, I sat at my old wooden desk and opened the drawer where I kept years of receipts, statements, business logs. Not because I expected to ever need them, but because I kept records the way a man who builds alone must. That night, I did not look at them as a father. I looked at them as evidence. I saw patterns, dates, shifts in account behavior, transfers he thought were invisible. I realized how long ago he had started using my identity. This wasn't a recent mistake. This was something he had been building slowly, carefully. With patience, he was always waiting, always planning. So now I would plan. I did something I never imagined I would do in my life. I went to the police myself, not to defend him, not to protect him, not to ask questions, but to tell the truth, the entire truth. I sat across from the same officer who had once placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, the officer who had tried to soften the blow when he told me my son was under investigation this time. His face changed when he saw mine. He saw resolve, not fear, not confusion, not heartbreak. Resolve is a quiet thing, but it is unmistakable. Laid everything on the table, literally, documents, dates, receipts, digital, logs, email backups, folders of statements, accounts Evan thought I never looked at because, in his mind, I was an old man who only understood the world in paper and ink. They didn't arrest him immediately. No, they were smarter than that. They watched him, tracked him, observed how he moved, money, who he spoke to, what he planned next, and I watched. Every morning at breakfast, every afternoon he left the house, wearing confidence like a well-tailored coat. Every night he returned, humming, smiling, comfortable in his belief that the world would bend for him. I watched him laugh. I watched him charm. I watched him live with the ease of someone who believed consequences were for other people, and that was the hardest part. Not the betrayal, not the financial ruin, not even the shame that followed me through town. The hardest part was pretending I didn't already know where this road would end, to pour him a cup of coffee, knowing that one day soon I would watch police place his hands behind his back, to hear him talk about future plans, knowing that his world was shrinking without him realizing it, to look at his face across the dinner table, knowing that I was no longer looking at my son. I was looking at a man who had chosen who he was, and I quietly, painfully, deliberately had chosen who I would now have to be: the witness, the architect of the truth, the father who would not save him this time. It happened on a morning so peaceful it almost felt cruel, the kind of morning where the world seems gentle, where sunlight lays soft across the kitchen floor, and the birds outside chirp like they believe life is simple, kind, and untouched by darkness, where breakfast sits on the table, quietly warm, ordinary, as if nothing in the world is waiting to break. Evan came downstairs, humming, not loudly, just a small, confident hum, the kind a man makes when he is sure the day belongs to him. His shirt was ironed, his hair was neat, that same smooth, polished smile sat on his face, the one he had learned to wear like armor, like a mask, like a performance meant to win the world. He sat down across from me, picked up his coffee, and didn't notice the way my hands rested still on the table. Didn't notice that I wasn't reading the morning paper like I always did. Didn't notice that I was simply waiting, because he never really looked at me anymore. He looked through me, then knock. Not loud, not frantic, just firm, steady. A knock that did not ask permission to enter our lives, but declared that it already had. Evan froze. His hand paused halfway to his mouth. His smile faded, not into fear, but into irritation. He looked at the door like it was an inconvenience. I didn't move, not because I was afraid, but because I had already lived this moment 100 times in my mind. The knock came again. He swallowed slowly and stood. I stayed seated. He opened the door. The police didn't storm in. There were no guns, no shouting, just two officers. Calm, professional, serious. They said his name, Evan Hayes. You are under arrest. He didn't look at them. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, but not with fear, with betrayal. Real, genuine betrayal, as if I had wronged him. Dad, he said, and his voice didn't break. It accused. What did you do? For a moment, we just stared at each other. The house felt so quiet. The birds outside still sang. The sunlight still shone. The world did not pause for our tragedy, and in that silence, I finally saw the truth of us. He had expected me to protect him, not because of love, but because he thought I was weak, because he believed I would always bend, always forgive, always step aside while he burned everything I'd ever built. He believed I owed him my life, but fathers do not owe their children the freedom to destroy. So I stood up, not quickly, slowly, deliberately. I walked toward him, just until we were close enough that he could no longer pretend he didn't see me, truly see me. And I said, quietly, not angry, not triumphant, just honest. I did what a father does. He blinked, confused. I finished. I taught you a lesson. His expression shattered. Shock first, then disbelief, then rage. A rage that came from the deepest part of his ego. You think you're better than me, he shouted as the officers took his hands and pulled them behind his back. You think you're righteous. You're nothing. You hear me? Nothing. Just a small man with a small life. The officers guided him out the door. He fought not with his body, but with words. Words meant to wound, words meant to make me doubt. Words meant to break me where the law could not. I didn't move. I didn't shout back. I didn't cry. I just stood there in my doorway, watching the boy I raised, the man I failed, the stranger I lived beside be taken away. And in that moment, I realized something. Maybe I was small. Maybe my life was simple. Maybe I had built something quiet and ordinary and modest. But it was honest, and that was something. He could never understand. You cannot purchase honesty. You cannot charm your way into it. You cannot steal it, or forge it, or fake it. Honesty is earned every day. Every year. Every choice. And he had never chosen it, not once. The cruiser door closed, the engine started, the tires rolled down the driveway and disappeared. Around the bend, the house was quiet again. Breakfast still warm on the table, sunlight still soft on the floor, and I stood there, not victorious, just tired. But in that quiet, I finally knew the fall had been necessary, because sometimes the only way to save what's left of your soul is to let go of the person who once depended on it. After Evan was taken away, life did not snap back into place like I thought it would. There was no clean reset, no peace that washed over me, no relief. Instead, the world went quiet. Too quiet, the town whispered. Yes, because towns like ours always do. Whispers carry faster than the wind in a place where everybody knows everybody. But this time, those whispers did not carry blame. They didn't say, Walter raised a criminal the way I feared. They said things like, poor Walter. He tried. He did everything for that boy. No one could have known. Some people spoke softly to me when they saw me. Some simply put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed, as if words were too clumsy for grief like mine. And that was the strangest part. For the first time in months, maybe years, I was not the one being questioned, people didn't look at me like I was blind, or foolish, or weak. They looked at me like a man who had lost something real, something irreplaceable, because that's what it was. It wasn't my business I lost, they cleared me. It wasn't my reputation, the town forgave me. It wasn't even money that could always be rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, honestly. No, I lost something far more permanent. I lost the version of my son that lived in my heart, the boy who held my hand when crossing the street. The boy who crawled into my lap during thunderstorms, the boy who once cried because a bird hit a window and he thought it had died. Where did that child go? When did the shift happen? Was it gradual, like a slow erosion, or did it happen in one defining moment I missed? These questions hung inside me like ghosts. The shop became my anchor. The smell of oil, the clang of tools, the old radio on the shelf, humming static-filled songs. My hands kept working, because if they stopped, I feared my mind would collapse into the memories. Some evenings, customers would pause before leaving, not to talk about payments, not about repairs, but simply to say, "We're here if you need anything, Walter." I would nod, grateful, but I never took them up on it. Grief is a lonely thing, not because people won't sit with you, but because no one else can sit in the exact same pain. There are some wounds only the heart knows how to hold. One afternoon, I don't remember exactly when, I walked past his room. I had been avoiding it for weeks, maybe longer, but the door was there still, unmoved, waiting. So I opened it. The air smelled stale, untouched, the bed still made, the bookshelf still lined with trophies, photos, awards. Every symbol of the person I believed he was. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself inside. I sat on the floor. There was a box in the closet. I recognized it. A box full of his childhood things, the things I never had the heart to throw away. I opened it, and there they were. Crayon drawings of us, holding hands. A Father's Day card drawn in crooked letters. Best Dad in the WRLD. A photograph of him missing 2 front teeth. Smiling like joy was easy. Like life wasn't complicated. Like love couldn't turn into something sharp. Then I found it. That paper crown, construction paper, yellow, taped together at the ends. Dad, written across the front in uneven marker strokes. He was 7 when he made it. He had placed it on my head while I was sitting on the couch, said, "You're the king, Dad," and laughed like that was the greatest truth in the world. I held that crown in my hands, and I broke, not loud, not dramatic, just fell into myself. My shoulders shook, my throat tightened, my chest ached like someone had reached inside and taken something essential, because I had loved him. Not halfway, not conditionally. I had loved him with everything I had poured every bit of tenderness, strength, hope, and patience into raising him. And love like that, love that deep, that honest, that unguarded, has nowhere to go when it shatters. It doesn't disappear, it just lingers. It sits heavy in the ribs. It lives in the quiet moments. It whispers in memories. I sat there on the floor, holding that paper crown, and for the first time I finally understood. I wasn't just grieving the man he had become. I was grieving the child he used to be. The child, I thought, he would remain. The child I believed would grow into a good man, but that child was gone, and the man left behind was a stranger wearing his face. So I cried, not because I was ashamed, but because sometimes the only way to honor a love that has been lost is to allow yourself to feel every piece of the breaking. And I did, slowly, fully, silently, in that small, quiet room where a father once believed love could save everything. People ask me, sometimes gently, sometimes with that tone people use when they're trying to sound wise, whether I regret turning my own son in. They ask like there is only one answer a father should give, like the right thing would have been to protect him, no matter the cost. They expect hesitation, maybe guilt, maybe shame. But I don't hesitate. No, I do not regret it. I regret many things, things that sit inside me like stones at the bottom of a river. But turning him in is not one of them. That was the first moment I chose truth over love. Or maybe the first moment I chose real love, the kind that doesn't enable a person to destroy everything around them. What I regret is everything that came before. I regret not seeing him sooner, not listening to my instincts when something felt wrong, not asking questions because I didn't want the answers. I regret believing that love alone could shape a man, because now I understand something I wish I had known much earlier. A child is not built only by what we give them, but also by what we refuse to let them become. I gave Evan stability. I gave him warmth. I gave him safety. I gave him my entire heart. But I didn't teach him limits. I didn't teach him that success without character is not success. It's just dressed up emptiness. I taught him to reach, but I didn't teach him why one should reach. I taught him to work, but I didn't teach him that work means something only when done honestly. I taught him that he was loved, but I didn't teach him the responsibility of being loved. I never imagined that a boy raised in a small home, with a father who kissed his forehead goodnight, could grow up to think the world owed him something. Maybe that's where I failed him, and that thought, it has lived in me like a quiet sickness. Because no matter how much logic I throw at it, no matter how clearly I remember the choices he made, no matter how I replay every memory until the edges blur, the ache stays. A parent always asks themselves, where did I go wrong? Did it start when his mother walked out? Was that abandonment a wound he carried in silence? Did he blame me for not making her stay? Did that shape something bitter inside him? Did I work too much? Did I miss some moment, some hinge point where everything could have been different? Or, and this is the one that hurts most to say out loud, was this always inside him? Was it in him as a child? In the way he watched, not felt? In the way he smiled at praise more than kindness? In the way he performed goodness instead of lived it? These thoughts are not kind. They are not easy. They are not gentle. But grief is not gentle. It tears. It claws. It rolls through the chest like thunder and leaves echoes behind. And yet I am still his father. I still remember the sound of his laugh echoing through the house when he was small, the kind of laugh that came from pure joy, like he didn't yet know the world could disappoint him. I remember how he used to fall asleep with his hand wrapped tightly around my thumbs, like the world was simple and safe and he was mine to protect. I remember Christmas mornings, when he tore open gifts so fast the wrapping paper flew, and he'd look up at me like I was the one who put magic under the tree. I remember every small, bright piece of him, and because of that, because of love, I do not get to forget the man he became. That is the cost. Love doesn't disappear when trust breaks. It just sits there, heavy like old paint that won't scrape off no matter how hard you try. So when people ask me, was it hard, turning your son in, I say, it was the hardest thing I have ever done. And also, it was the only thing I could do. My son stood at a crossroad, and he chose himself, above everyone, above morality, above law, above love. He chose power without integrity, winning without honor, success without soul, and I couldn't pull him back from that road. Not anymore. A father can carry a child only so far after a certain point. They choose who they are going to be, and Evan chose. He chose to see kindness as weakness. He chose to use love as leverage. He chose to value admiration more than respect. He chose a world where the people around him were pieces to move, not hearts to protect. So I chose to stop letting him harm others. I chose to stop covering the truth. I chose to stop being the father who closed his eyes. And if I had to make that choice 1,000 times more, I would. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I loved him enough to stop him from falling deeper into the person he was becoming. That is the part people don't understand. Sometimes love is not soft. Sometimes love is not forgiving. Sometimes love is a breaking. Sometimes love is the hand that closes the door, because leaving it open would only lead to greater ruin. I don't regret turning him in. I regret the years I spent believing love alone was enough. I regret the silence, the excuses, the hope that blinded me. But I do not regret the truth, because truth, even when it hurts, is the only thing that can save what remains. And after everything collapsed, everything burned, everything shattered, truth is the only thing I have left that still belongs to me. If you are a parent listening to this, let me tell you something. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with a heart that has lived through this and survived. Love your children. Yes, love them with everything you have. Love them with your time, your presence, your patience, your hands, your words. But do not worship them, because worship blinds. Worship turns them into something untouchable, something unquestionable. And when a person becomes untouchable, they begin to believe they are beyond consequences, beyond truth, beyond the need to be decent. See your children. Truly see them, not the version of them you dream about when they're small and sleeping on your chest. Not the image of who you wish they were, strong, kind, noble, better than you. And not the version they put on for the world, the perfect smile, the polite tone, the achievements, the trophies, the charm. No, see the child behind all of that, the vulnerable parts, the flaws, the shadows growing quietly in the corners of their character. See when they manipulate. See when they lie. See when they choose selfishness over integrity. See when they hurt others and shrug as if feelings don't matter, because children learn what we allow, and they become what we ignore when they go wrong. And every child does at some point. In some form. Don't turn away because it hurts to look. Don't silence yourself because you're afraid they'll hate you. Don't make excuses for them to protect your image of them. Don't say he didn't mean it, or she's just stressed, or they'll grow out of it. No, that's not love. That's fear wearing the mask of kindness. Hold them accountable. Teach them the weight of actions. Let them feel the consequences that life will always give, whether we intervene or not. Do not lie for them. Do not hide their mistakes so the world doesn't judge. Do not say it's just paperwork, just one lie, just one little harm, because character is formed in the just this once. That is where the foundation is either built or broken. And if you protect them from every consequence, if you cushion every fall, if you remove every hardship, they do not become strong. They do not become grateful. They do not become successful. They become entitled. They become hollow. They become a person who thinks love is a currency they are owed and other people exist to carry their weight. They learn to take and take and take because no one ever taught them that taking has a cost. Love without accountability is not love at all. It is fear, and fear destroys families. Quietly at first, like water leaking under a house. You don't notice it. You don't hear it. But one day the floor caves in under your feet and you wonder how it happened. It happens slowly. It happens when you ignore the little things, when you silence the uncomfortable conversations, when you choose peace instead of truth, when you choose to protect them instead of guiding them. If I could go back, I wouldn't love my son less, but I would love him harder. The kind of love that says, I believe in you, but I will not let you harm others. Support you, but I will not excuse. You, I accept you, but I will not let you become someone who destroys your own life. That is love with a spine. That is love that stands. That is love that builds human beings. So if you are a parent, love deeply, yes, but look clearly. And when the moment comes, when the road divides and the child you love stands at the edge of a choice that could define everything, do not choose silence. Do not choose comfort. Choose the harder thing. Choose honesty. Choose responsibility. Choose the love that might hurt now, but heals later, because love without truth is a wound, and wounds, when ignored, become scars that never close. I still visit him sometimes, not often, not regularly, not with the rhythm of routine or the hope of repair, but on days when the air is still, when memory sits heavy on the chest, when the road seems to call my name more than the town does. I drive. The prison is not far. Just a stretch of road winding past the fields where he once played as a child. The same grass he used to run through with scraped knees and laughter echoing behind him. I remember watching him from the porch, thinking I had all the time in the world to get everything right. And now I walk through metal detectors and locked doors to see him through glass. I don't go because I expect forgiveness. I don't go because I need it, and I don't go because I owe him anything. That debt was paid the day I chose truth over blood, and carried the weight of that choice alone. I go because he is still my son, and love real. Love the kind that roots itself deep into your bones, and never leaves, does not simply vanish, because life grew complicated or painful or twisted. Love does not disappear because disappointment came. Love does not crumble because someone you raised became someone you can no longer recognize. No, love remains, even when it is wounded, even when it is quiet, even when it is tired, even when it is broken. But here is what changed. I do not look away anymore. I look him in the eyes fully, steadily, and he looks away first. Every time there is something in him now, something fragile beneath the anger he tries to carry like armor, something uncertain beneath all that defiance, something human that was missing for a long time. I don't speak in apologies. I don't speak in blame. I don't speak in the language of the past. Instead, I speak about values, honesty, integrity, respect, responsibility, words that sound small when you say them, but they are the pillars that hold a life upright. I speak them, slowly, with the calm of a man who has been burned and healed and rebuilt. He listens, not with agreement, not with acceptance, but with something else, something I once thought was gone in him forever. Recognition, because deep down, beneath every choice and every mask and every reckless moment, he knows who taught him those values. He knows whose hands built the life he used as a cover. He knows whose name he carried into the world and misused. And he knows that I did not betray him. I revealed him. There is a difference. I didn't destroy him. I stopped him from destroying himself completely. And maybe one day he will understand that. Maybe one day he will speak my name without bitterness. Maybe one day he will look at me and see not the man who turned him in, but the father who refused to give up on truth. Time will answer that, not me. But I know this now, so deeply, so painfully, so clearly. Raising a child isn't about giving them everything they want. It isn't about shielding them from every storm. It isn't about building a perfect life so they never fall. It's about teaching them what truly matters, even when they don't want to learn it, even when they turn away, even when they break your heart in the process. Character is not something you hand down. It is something you guide, shape, and guard, one lesson, one boundary, one truth at a time. And some lessons, unfortunately, are learned only through consequence. So these are my last words to whoever hears this. Love deeply, but love with clarity. Love with strength. Love with truth at its core. Because love that bends itself to avoid discomfort is not love, it is surrender. And families are not held together by surrender. They are held together by truth. Even when truth hurts, even when truth costs everything. And I speak these words now to whoever needs to hear them.